Hello guys, I'm Savvy and welcome back to another Kerbal Space Program video. In the last one, I believe I showed you guys how to put a space station around the Mun, and I gave a little tour of it as well. But in this one, we're going to be doing another rover mission, and this time we're actually going to be going to Minmus. Now, I've done one for the Mun, I've done one for the Eve, I haven't done one for Minmus. Now, Minmus is a little bit tricky because its gravity is super duper low. So it's kind of tricky to have something heavy enough to roam around, but what I try to not really make it as heavy as possible by putting a bunch of stuff on it, but what's interesting is later on in the video, which I'll be explaining, this whole process will be almost sped up until probably the part before we're going to land. Um, it's just going to be me doing the voiceover because there was something that I noticed that went wrong that I didn't really anticipate and I didn't really notice until way later. But we still landed on Minmus, but like I said, something went wrong. But anyway, let's get to the building part of this. So I decided to put two of those radioisotopes charger things or batteries on the sides with an actual battery on top of it so we could just regenerate electricity over time rather than trying to use solar panels. Now, what's funny is I actually tried to do this before and there was a couple issues that I had. Now, one of them had to do with the solar panels, not, I only put them on the rover. I didn't put them on the actual craft, like ones that extended out or retracted, because I ran out of power, so then I had to revert back again. Then I also did one where the rover crashed into Minmus, but because I didn't have control over it. But something I did change near the end of the build here. But this build, I'm actually going to be doing a asparagus staging build, so you can see where I'm putting those fuel ducts there. I put one next to its, I guess, adjacent to it, and then I put the second one to the middle one. When there's four, you have one that goes to the other, and then it's pretty much mirrored. And then you separate them specifically based on which fuel tanks are going to be emptied first, based on how you set them up in the first place. And then I also wanted to have more control here, so I decided to get myself some more reaction wheels here because even though it's kind of a tiny craft here, you always want to have more control. So the last part here that I do is I actually pick up the battery and then I put a little reaction wheel there because with my mistakes from before that I learned from, I need a little bit more control. Now, I didn't have to do that for my previous one, so I'm not really sure what went wrong with my previous attempts, but yeah, you also saw there that I added the little wheels because, I mean, we don't need the big old wheels, which probably would have added weight to it. But I wanted the little wheels because we don't really need to be traveling that much. It's going to be tricky to kind of travel through Minmus because of its low gravity. I mean, you can forget trying to travel. I mean, there's no point in putting a rover on Gilly, for example, but even if you were, I mean, not really anything you could do if you float away or something, because the littlest move that you do, the tiniest maneuver, you're just going to be flipping around. And Minmus is similar. Minmus is obviously larger than Gilly, but yeah, it still works pretty much the same because Minmus is very tiny compared to the Mun's gravity, that is. Because with the Mun, we can obviously rover around. Eve is super easy to rover around in because its gravity is so large because it is a planet. Also, I noticed that the recording, I was talking to friends up at in Discord, so there's the Discord overlay up there. But you guys can't hear them. It's just my voice. My friend there was playing Street Fighter, and then Alex was playing the new Monster Hunter Wild, which is pretty awesome. But as you can see, as I was explaining, the two fuel tanks, the first set of fuel tanks came out. That's how asparagus staging works. Those were emptied, so those go first, and then the second set will come later once we're about to get ourselves into orbit, and then we get rid of those, and then we have the middle stage left. Because all that fuel is channeling into those secondary tanks, and then our tertiary tank, which is the middle one, that gets all the fuel from those secondary tanks, which is really good. So it all just funnels fuel all the way through that entire system. And, I coast along for a little bit. That's usually how I do it. And I set the design of the of the rocket a little bit differently because I put the I put a probodobodyne right underneath that little engine that's on the little fuel tank there, just because I needed a center of control there, so I wanted to put that probodobodyne there because it's really hard to figure out the maneuvering of the rover if I have that as the control module, because the nav ball is set up completely differently. Meaning like the way you turn and position is a little bit more wonky, at least in my experience with it, than it is with a probodobodyne, where it's more of like the standard type of positioning. But we make our trajectory here to Minmus, and I mean, what I'll say is like this mission is just for fun, because really, if you want to put a rover on Minmus, it'd probably have to be a lot larger and more of like a rover that's actually manned, rather than just having this unmanned rover. Or even if I did have an unmanned rover, it would have to be a lot larger to pretty much make sure that it has a lot of weight on it for it to actually drive around and roll around its wheels. Now, Minmus was on the other side of Kerbin there, so we had to do one full orbit first, and then we made our way to Minmus just like that. And I was actually really far away from it with our periapsis, so I decided to burn retrograde right away. Pretty simple there. I don't know where that purple line was, like, unless I was going to meet it again at some point. I'm not really sure why that was there. But I bring down the orbit. We get into orbit, then I bring it down. It's super easy to get into orbit around Minmus, because you just have to go really, really slow. Like, just look how slow that is. It's only like 159 meters per second. And I noticed that I was literally right above the flatlands, and I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna burn retrograde all the way through. Now, as you can see, like I had actually plenty of fuel left over with this bottom stage, so I didn't really need all that fuel. I literally could have just used the one tall tank and not that bottom tank, and we would have had enough to get into orbit and to slow ourselves down, and then use the rest of it from the rover itself, where I put the liquid fuel tank underneath with that little engine there. And that little engine has some power to it, though. Not gonna lie, it's pretty strong. But now here's the part where I'm slowing it down a little bit. This is where we're gonna go to normal speed, because this is where I noticed my wheels were broken. And I'm thinking, this is the part that went wrong. I'm like, what broke my wheels? And I had no idea what broke them. I don't know if it was the fairing that I jettisoned that caused the wheels to break, but for some reason they just did. But I'm like, you know what? I had like multiple mistakes with with these missions trying to get this here, so I'm just gonna go with the flow. And there's all kinds of other science that we can get with this, despite it, it with the wheels being broken. And you could technically still move around with the rover, as you'll see in a little bit, but I just decoupled the bottom stage there because I thought, you know what, I don't need it anymore. And then I have a kind of a hard time trying to land the thing, because again, with maneuvering the rover itself, like if I didn't have a probodobodyne on top of that, well, which I didn't, it was very hard to control. I had the reaction wheels there because I wouldn't be spinning out of control, but I probably should have changed its point of reference. Instead of like forward, probably reversed or something. But next time, if I do something like this, which if you want me to see do it again where it's more successful, and I might come up with a different design, you guys can let me know in the comments down below. And I'll put a probodobodyne on top of it, unless I decide to do a manned rover, which probably that would be a cool mission. But yeah, you can see those exploding there. And I'm kind of getting off course with how I'm going to land, because I'm going sideways, as you can see, just like that. And then I get really confused as to how I'm supposed to turn because the way that this rover is referenced, or this rover module, it's just very confusing. But I get closer to the ground and I'm not really going that fast, so I kind of just make corrections here and there. And again, I didn't really, there's like a lot of fuel at this last stage here compared to the size of our rover, but I needed it to kind of slow us down a little bit. There's like some mechanism I could make where I have like these arms that go out and then it kind of makes it, we make it land with the rover and then those jettison off, but this works just the same. But there we go. And look at that. With the reaction wheels, I'm very easily able to control this thing. But again, the wheels are broken, so we can't roll around, but I can just kind of I could just dance around with this thing. And if I wanted to find a rock, I would have to just continue dancing. But I decided to do goose science, the gravioli, the thermometer, and the barometer science there, just to kind of prove that, look, even though the wheels don't work, you can't roll around. You can, one, move around still, and two, to get all this other science data that you probably couldn't get. And this could be just a point where you could get connection to the rover or to the KSC if you have a satellite in orbit around it, around Minmus or some other point of communication if you land. Or this could just be something that you could scrap entirely, or you could pick up the data that the rover picked up from the goo and everything, and you could just take it back home with you. Because Minmus landing missions and exploring missions are super easy. But look at that view. You got the Mun and Kerbin in the background, and I was taking a screenshot for this because this is going to be the thumbnail. But I think this is the point where I'm just like, yep, mission accomplished, sort of, kind of. But yeah, I think I'm going to wrap it up here, though. But if you did enjoy this, be sure to leave a like if you haven't already. I'd really appreciate that. This was a fun mission to do. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button as well because it lets me know that you guys enjoy the content on the channel and would like to see more. I'd also like to give a shout out to all of my channel members whose names I'll put up screen right now. Thank you so much for being a channel member, and you will also get a shout out if you become a member down below by hitting the join button, as well as emotes and other perks such as those things. But yeah, I'm gonna let this just go for another minute. But I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I've been Savvy, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys. See you later.